Hi, my name is Erica Steeves. I am a product stylist and commercial photographer. Today I'm doing something a little bit different. I did an interview with Chelsy Weisz from the Weisz Photographer podcast, and she is sharing 3 things of how portrait photographer can pivot and change in their business to do product photography as well. If you want to scale your business to new heights, stay tuned and listen in to see the advice that she has to say on today's episode. Like this video and subscribe to my channel. A new video will be launching every Tuesday where I am going to be taking you behind the scenes tips and tricks on product styling and commercial photography. So keep watching as we dive in today. Today, I am so excited to be talking with Chelsy Weisz from Weisz Photographer podcast.
Hey Erica, I'm so excited to be on the YouTube channel today. This will be my first YouTube interview, so thank you so much for having me.
Super excited to dive in here. You have so much really great knowledge to share. And I was just hoping that you could maybe give us a brief introduction of who you are and any standout things that you've done recently or in the past that can really just kind of resonate with our audience of new and up and coming photographers.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I am a portrait photographer mainly. I started my business back in 2012, right after I got married and we had our daughter Skylar. And I kind of started my photography business kind of to find my own identity again. I felt like I kind of lost myself in all these new roles. So that was a fun project to start there. I did family photography and senior photography before I really found my stride in wedding photography. And that's really been where like my heart just kind of has pulled me to. In 2016, my husband had 3 heart surgeries. So he had his valve replaced 3 different times after an infection. In 2017, he actually had his sternum removed. And that whole process really just made me value weddings and what they represent at the start of marriage so much more, that it just solidified that, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, is wedding photography. Since going through our whole craziness of life between, the surgeries and the sternum removal, and in between there, I also had our second child. The only thing that really kept my business afloat and really helped me to grow was to have systems and workflows in place. So I was able to continue to book brides while in the waiting room without kind of taking up too much of my mental space. And that's when I started the Weisz Photographer podcast, and was on the other side of that season, because I really realized that these systems and workflows were needed to be shared with other photographers, and how they can kind of create their own workflows to serve their audience better, but also to be able to step away from their business and have time to themselves.
Something like when we had done the podcast on the episode that we did for Weisz Photographer, it was happening like right on the cusp of like when everything was happening with the coronavirus, and we had the conversation that like people who are photographers and wedding photographers, portrait photographers have a really unique skill set and can bring something really unique to product photography. And it is, I feel, like an overlooked opportunity or a missed opportunity. Can you kind of share a little bit about this, of like how maybe pivoting and taking on some clients like this in times of crisis, or when there is down spurts of wedding photography, how it's viable to be doing product photography in these times to have a more stronger, healthier business that with diverse different income streams?
Yeah, and I really thank you so much for coming on the episode, because I really think it opened up my eyes a little bit more, but also a lot of other listeners that we had on the podcast. So I live in the northern United States, and we have a very long, cold winter time. And so for wedding photography, there's really not a lot of weddings that are happening at negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit in North Dakota. So for me, there's definitely a downtime. When you're trying to run a business, you really want to have consistent income coming in throughout the entire year. It makes things a lot easier financially, stress levels, if you have a consistent income. And oftentimes that's really not the case. What's really awesome with commercial photography and product photography is that you can diversify those income revenue streams by reaching out and starting to work with brands and larger companies to do more product photography that you can do in your home. There's, I think, 3 things that really stood out to me. And the first one is that your skills as a portrait photographer are very transferable into product and commercial photography. You understand lighting, you understand composition, you understand a lot of the technical things as far as, shutter speed and aperture and all of that. So you've already mastered a very challenging part of commercial photography, more than you probably give yourself credit for. You are able to really tell the story in a different way. And the one awesome thing, portrait photographers, is you likely already have all the equipment that you're going to need, maybe besides like a tripod. But that's a pretty small investment compared to your cameras and lenses.
Are you loving this interview? Comment below and keep the conversation going as we brainstorm more ideas about how you can pivot in your business to include product styling and product photography.
Is one thing my second point, is that you really need to understand the story that you're trying to convey with your images. Sometimes as a photographer in a commercial and brand setting, you get to be a part of that story that is being created, and sometimes that story is kind of predetermined by the bigger company's overall message that they're wanting to convey, and it's your job to create that story through the image. Third thing that I really would invite other photographers, new photographers that are coming into this to look at, is to look at how your role is going to be in this overall project. When you're a portrait photographer, oftentimes people are coming to you because you're filling more of an artistic role. So you get to take more artistic liberties, and you're kind of like the final say on whether or not this image is, usable or presentable or represents your brand as a photographer. Where in commercial photography, oftentimes you are filling a role of more just the photographer to capture the image and the story that's already been laid out before you. And sometimes when you have that creative criticism on images, it can be tough, as coming from a portrait photographer, to distance yourself from that end product, because as portrait photographers, oftentimes we're very emotionally attached to our images, and it's very hard sometimes to have that little sting when someone's like, no, this isn't quite what we're looking for. Can we change this? And when you can really step back and look at it a little bit more objectively, in that, this is my role in creating this image that they had in mind, or showing them, these are the options based on what the story is that you're wanting to tell, it can be a lot better for you mentally if you can kind of detach yourself emotionally from your work, if that makes sense at all.
It makes perfect sense, actually. I was just talking to somebody just a few minutes ago before we jumped on the call, and I was telling her how, like, with product photography, you can't be precious about it. Ultimately, like, it's your work, but you are filling a bigger vision for somebody else and their brand that they've invested so much time in. So it really just, like, you can't be precious. Like, if the client isn't feeling it, or if there's something about it that isn't working, you can't be afraid to just tear down and start over again. Products and objects don't have feelings. So it's not like like your subject when you're doing portrait photography or wedding photography, that, like, you're really invested in their time and like the moment that they're trying to achieve with a wedding. Like, that is just like a once in a lifetime moment and opportunity that you're capturing. So with product photography, you just have to see it as very objective and come at it from a very like creative problem solving point of view. If something isn't working, just tear it down and try again. I always love having lots of really great reference images on hand that I can kind of pull off of and help streamline my message and vision with my clients, so that I'm not just starting from scratch or reinventing the wheel, because this is a non-starter. It's just like, it's a big waste of time. So
Yeah, I love what you said, problem solving. I think that's a really good way of describing the artist, where you are kind of more in charge of what the final image looks like. Where with the other one, where with commercial and brand photography, you're problem solving to collaborate to create this final image. I think in my own experiences, right after Justin's surgery, I had kind of slowed down on booking some weddings. I still had some coming up, but our revenue stream was down. And I was able to reach out to Social Squares to become a contributing photographer. And that really helped to fill the gaps in between, financially, in between my weddings. And that was just something that was super awesome. And I'm so glad that I had the skill set and the ability to do that.
So something that I am really passionate about and just like sharing with other portrait photographers, wedding photographers, is that you are weekend warriors and you are on Saturday, Sunday evenings. And by booking commercial photography too, I really am passionate that you have an opportunity to have a more balanced lifestyle where you're doing more 9 to 5. When you do book weddings, it's typically, like that event only happens one time for that couple. And then if they do get to have children and things like this, there might be an opportunity to do family portrait sessions. But in general, like when you are doing commercial photography, you're building relationships with one business, one company, and you really start to infuse yourself into the brand and you become an extension of their team, which I think is really beautiful and a really great opportunity to have continuous and reoccurring business over many years. So I think this is similar to what you're talking about in ways that you can fill the gaps over especially in not in your lulls, but how you can set yourself up for success and the growth of your business to be able to scale it to new heights.
I definitely agree with that. I think a lot of times if you're shooting portrait photography at a lower price point, you're shooting so much and it's so easy to get burnt out there. When you can take on fewer clients at a higher price point, that's kind of ideal. And then when you start to bring in some brand photography with that as well, you're diversifying that even more. And like you said, with wedding photography, the way I run it is I don't really shoot families afterwards. So my clients' lifespan is a one shoot thing. Maybe we have an engagement session and a wedding, but after the wedding, there's really not much for me. So I'm constantly having to market myself a lot more to new clients where I like the idea of working with brands where you're developing that relationship and you're able to do multiple projects throughout the year. And
Yeah,
that's
that's
kind of how I would understand it and explain the
yeah.
difference.
100%. I'm so excited that you were able to come on today. Did you have any last parting messages or things that you'd like to share with new photographers and also how people can find you and listen to your Wise Photographer podcast?
Yeah, I would say, my biggest thing here that I would definitely push across to portrait photographers who are interested in pursuing the brand and commercial photography is give it a shot. You don't really know what you don't know beforehand. So maybe you might not be, you might not have an image on Times Square, next week, but it's a fun creative outlet to definitely look at. And definitely a smart and wise decision to diversify your income. As far as finding me online, my name is Chelsy Weisz. It's spelled really funny. Chelsy is spelled Chelsy, and then Weisz is for my last name is Weisc. But if you search the Weisz Photographer, Wise photographer, you can find me everywhere on Instagram. If you do the wisephotographerpodcast.com, that'll bring you to my website, chelseyweisz.com. But I'm sure you can link everything below there as well. Otherwise, thank you so much for having me on the channel today.
Perfect. That was so awesome. Woo-hoo.
Yay!
In this episode, Chelsy explains how important a workflow is. At the very beginning, she was talking about how her husband had surgeries and she was able to still book clients in the waiting room. And similar to her, how she has her own workflow, I have a certain workflow as well. And it's an opportunity where you can pick and choose and take what serves you and leave the rest. If you can even take a couple of great nuggets from each of us, this will really help you set your own foundation and be able to get so much further ahead than where we were when we started. So what are you waiting for? You can grab my onboarding process and the link below. Remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel. A new video will be launching every Tuesday. Today I did something a little bit different where I did an interview with Chelsy Weisz, and I was so excited to hear her knowledge and just her wisdom that she has to share.